welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. So we are in the middle of another heat wave. It is summer, we are used to this, but I right now am starting to collect a lot of stuff from the garden, and when we are in peak preservation time, I need to be preserving something every day or else I'm going to get behind. Admittedly, I'm a little bit behind on my dairy processing, but today I really need to focus on some beans. I'm going to be showing you how to make some dilly beans by fermenting them in just a little bit, but I took a little video yesterday giving you an update on the goats, and I want to show you that first. So I'm going to roll that footage here and I'll see you back in the garden in about 6 minutes. One of my favorite parts about having goats in electric netting is the fact that they are healthier for it. There's actually quite a few things now that I think about it. They get to manage a lot of our land for us because we mostly have open grassland, but I really like opening up new pastures for them and seeing just how excited they get. They feel like they've had a jailbreak. You can see it on their faces. We can actually come through this gate into the pumpkin patch to get to the other side. Hey boys, did I scare you, Mochi? Back there is our most skittish buck that we have right now. His name is Havoc, and Havoc holds a special place in my heart. He's not the first buck that we've had on our farm. We've been through a lot. When he was, I think, 4 to 5 months old, he broke his leg. And I had never had a serious problem or really any problem at all with any of my goats. So I didn't have a vet just to call and to go to. So I was trying to call the more local vets. My neighbor didn't have any solution for me. He keeps cattle, but the vet that he uses recently just got out of doing large animals. And so I was calling around, and the first vet that I called was very condescending. He's like, "Why are you trying to save a farm goat? Put it down." And I was like, "I don't think you understand." Like, oh my goodness, it was such a hopeless feeling. But we did end up finding a vet that has a goat herd herself and had some compassion for the situation and fixed him right up, and he's been a treasure. Hi, sweetheart. Hello. I know, usually I come out with cookies. I'm so sorry to disappoint. I'm so sorry. No. So speaking of Havoc, we have retained several of his daughters throughout the years. He likes to throw girls like crazy. That's one of the best qualities about Havoc, is he is very good at making does. I think one year, last year, he had 5 boys and 16 girls. It was amazing. 3 of those 16 girls are right here. These are Elvis's triplets from last year. We recently bred Fury to one of our bucks that we bought in from another farm. His name is Feral. With mini La Manchas, it's kind of hit or miss whether or not they're going to cycle year round like a Nigerian dwarf would, or if they're going to cycle just in the fall time like a La Mancha does. And I think that Fury cycles more like a La Mancha. She was with Feral for long enough to have gone through more than just one heat cycle. I did see him breed her, but I think it was just one of those things where she didn't know what was going on and she didn't move, and she's not bred. But that's okay. That means that I can plan to breed her this fall with her sisters, and she'll be in milk for us come springtime. I'm definitely not feeding you treats with you guys jumping all over me, Alara. Alara, you are bigger than Stormy. And Stormy is a year older than you, but she's a mini. This is an IG. Stormy is bred too. Can we see your little baby udder? Winnie, you're not gonna be bred until next year, okay? Next year we'll be looking at you like that. You can see it developing more this week. Can you tell? Oh, it's so cute. Ah! Sorry, Clover, are you being protective of Stormy? She's definitely developing that first little udder. It's so cute. Winnie, you're so spoiled. This has actually been a very good year for us as far as parasites on our farm. We have had a couple bouts of coccidia. We have had a couple situations where I felt like I needed to give a chemical dewormer, but compared to previous years, this year was probably our best. And I think that that is attributed to a few different factors. One thing that we did that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned to you guys is we gave extra copper this springtime. I don't know if it was a post, a blog, or a video from Deborah Neiman, but she had mentioned that the dosage of copper that she gives her goats in the bolus is 1 gram per 22 pounds. So a big goat like a La Mancha, Elsa here is massive. I haven't done a weight tape on her, but she's easily the biggest goat in the barn. She's probably 150. If I had just given her 4 grams, that would only provide half of the copper that she would need. So we gave our La Manchas 2 of the 4 gram copper boluses. The Nigerians only got 1 4 gram copper bolus, and then I gave the mini La Manchas a 4 gram plus a 2 gram, and everybody looks really good and has handled the parasites really well this year, despite it being a pretty rainy spring and early summer. You're so gorgeous. You'll get to see your boyfriend again in about September, end of September, early October. So the heat index that we have today is for heat values up to about 110. Honestly, it doesn't feel that bad out here right now. It's about 2 p.m. So we are headed into the warmest part of the day that we normally experience. It's usually between 3 and 5 when we have these really hot days that we have those super hot temps. But for now, doing all right. So I'm gonna come out here and harvest. This particular bean plant is growing on my grape trellis, and it was fine for a little while, but it's showing to be a little bit too aggressive. So I think I do have to take this out, but I'd really like to be able to take any beans off of it that it has to offer. These are a yellow wax bean, and they're really good. So far I've only found one, but we'll find more. This is a little one here. These guys are not awesome for preserving really any other way other than fermenting, because they get kind of soft no matter what I do otherwise. I've really found that that's true of any of these like flatter wax beans. I keep pulling and pulling, and I've gotten a lot of greenery but not a ton of beans, which I guess makes taking this off a little bit easier and less sad. I really don't know where this volunteer bean originates in this bed, or I would probably just elect to snap it off at the base and let it die back, but I think I've pretty much gotten it off of where the grape is growing at least. I really want this grape to take over this trellis. There it is. Huh. That bean root almost looks like a tuber. That's bizarre. While we're here, we'll take this opportunity to look at the nitrogen nodules on the roots of the bean plant. Should maybe leave that in the bed. Well, we didn't have much as far as those yellow wax beans go, which is okay. That was a bonus plant. I'm sure it would have produced lots of beans. It was just working on climbing the trellis first, but I didn't really need it there. So I have this patch of bush beans. These are the Kalima bush beans. These have been growing here since before our last frost of the season. We got a late frost. We ended up covering them. They survived really well. They've already gone through one major blooming and fruiting period, and then they sort of died back. Like literally the leaves were starting to die back. They stopped flowering. I don't really know what the situation was. I was getting ready to pull them out, and then I realized that they were starting to really green up. Lots of new foliage, tons of new flowers. I mean, there's more flowers on here right now than there was the first time they bloomed. And you know, I don't know that I've seen that before on any variety of bush bean. Pole beans will normally set fruit all season as long as you keep picking them. I haven't ever seen a bush bean variety that does that, but looks like the Kalima might, which is very exciting. We love these beans. I actually just bought a ton more seed, expecting to do quite a few more successions of beans this season, but I don't know that we're gonna have to. We'll see. so we're back inside now, and this was our bounty from today. This is going to increase. I'm picking this about every other day right now, and it'll probably double by the time many of those blooms set their pods. But we got plenty. My hope was that we'd be able to put a half-gallon jar's worth of fermented dilly beans in a jar today, and I think we're going to be able to accomplish that. Some of the other ingredients that I have are some whey, some salt, some grape leaves, garlic, fresh dill, flowering dill heads, and some peppercorns. With things like this that you are fermenting, the recipes are a lot more forgiving than something like a canning recipe when it comes to food safety. The main thing that you have to worry about with fermenting is getting your brine ratio correct, and really the ingredients that you want to add or omit in any given recipe. It's all up to you. So with what I'm about to share with you today, if you wanted to make alterations to the recipe, add something else that you think sounds good, by all means, go for it. So I'm breaking the little ends off, the little pieces where the bean was attached to the plant. These are not that tasty. I am choosing to snap them in half. You don't have to. I'm just hoping to fit more ingredients in the jar and take up less, dead space. I am not going to wash these beans. The beans are clean. I'm going to use beans that don't have little pieces of rust or disease, something like that. That just could potentially culture our brine with something that is less than ideal. We only want good things happening in the jar, so it's important to start with good ingredients so that we can maintain a healthy brine. But really, the bacteria, the natural bacteria that comes in on these beans is something that we do want, because that's where we're going to be able to get our proper fermentation. If we were to wash the beans, we'd be washing off a lot of the stuff that's going to inoculate our brine, and it would just probably set us back. Now, before I get this too full, I do want to add our other ingredients. I'm just kind of trying to sandwich them. It honestly probably doesn't matter what order you do this in. You could layer it however you like. I am going to end with one of these leaves though, and I'll explain why. I like to give my garlic a good smash before I put it in the jar. It just helps release its flavor. Actually, the beans that we harvested today were plenty to fill up this jar essentially all the way. I need to leave a little bit of space at the top for the weight that I'm going to put on here, and I'm going to put that grape leaf on top. So the grape leaf serves a couple different purposes. There are actually tannins inside the grape leaf that are going to help our dilly beans stay crisp, and then the shape of this leaf is actually really great for holding in things like the peppercorns, the dill flowers, anything small and light that might try to bubble up and float inside our brine. It should be held down by this grape leaf at the top. See how it covers everything? A lot of people will use cabbage leaves for the exact same purpose. And as far as the crispiness factor, if you don't have access to grape leaves, you can use bay leaves. And I have also used black tea. I've taken just a literal black tea bag and put it at the bottom of the jar of anything that I'm trying to keep crisp. It does not flavor the ferment at all, but the tannins in the tea help keep everything nice and crispy. So now we need to make the most important part of our ferment, which is the brine. And usually when I have a jar filled with things, I can expect that it's going to take about half that volume worth of brine to fill in the cracks. So because we have a half-gallon jar here, I'm going to make a quart of brine. It is very simple. So you need a quart of filtered water. You don't want to use city water or anything that has chlorine in it. That is just going to serve to kill our good bacteria. And again, we want to culture it, not kill it. So I do have a Berkey over here. I'll fill this with water. And then we need 2 to 3 tablespoons of sea salt or some other non-iodized salt. You can do less salt, but you're going to want to start with a starter culture if you do so. The purpose of the salt is to keep the bad bacteria at bay and make sure that the good bacteria will proliferate. The good bacteria can handle this amount of salt, the bad bacteria cannot. So I put about 2½ teaspoons of salt in there. I do have a starter culture, our whey. This is a really good one to use for a starter culture if you've got access to it. And I'm just gonna fill this with water. A lot of people will try to make sure that the salt is totally dissolved in the water before they add it to their ferment. They'll heat it up and then cool it down. I don't mess with any of that, and this works really well. First things first, I'm going to add a little bit of my whey. maybe about 1/4 cup. I've just moved the grape leaf to the side so stuff can get through. Or there's our whey. Adding in whey isn't necessary or any other starter culture. You could use something like sauerkraut brine or something like that. This is just gonna help give the good bugs a jump start. And right here is my salt water. I'm just gonna give it a little stir before we dump it in. If the salt isn't completely dissolved, that is not going to matter. Oh, so close. So I have to make up a tiny bit more brine. You know what? Instead of making more brine, I'll just top it off with whey. That'll work. All right, now you see how I've got a little bit of the grape leaf sticking up above the brine? The goal is to not have anything come up above the brine, because anything up above the brine is not going to be exposed to it thoroughly, and it could risk growing something nasty. So I have this glass, it's called a pickle puck, or something like that. It's a fermentation weight. I'm gonna put that on top. That's gonna help hold everything down below the brine. And really at this point, if you wanted to just put on a wide mouth lid a little bit loosely so that the ferment can burp, that is completely fine. You don't need anything special to get this to work. A lot of people will actually sterilize a rock, like a rock from their yard, and use that to weigh down their ferment. It definitely works as long as it's been boiled. I happen to have these stretchy, cool fermentation lids that I like a lot. It has this little burpable dimple in it. There's a ball bearing in there. So the ball bearing sits down in the hole to make sure nothing can enter the jar, but when the fermentation needs to let out some air, it'll push that ball bearing out of the way temporarily, and then it'll close it right back up again. I like these. So I'm just gonna stretch that over the top. And now we wait. This really only needs to ferment for about a week. It is going to depend on the conditions inside your home. It will depend on the activity, on like the starter culture that you put in there. Because I used whey in this fermentation, it may ferment a little bit faster. I would taste it after about 3 days, and then you could taste it daily after that. And when it gets to the fermentation that you like, the flavor that you like, go ahead and remove the pickle puck, put on a sealing lid, and stick it in the fridge. And this is gonna keep for many months. I will say though that be very aware of what's going on with this jar. It might be best to put this inside like a pie plate or something, just in case the activity inside the jar, the little bubbling that's gonna happen in a few days, sometimes can create a little bit of siphoning, and some of the liquid can come out of the jar. You want to have it on top of something that will be able to catch that and not ruin your counter. So yeah, besides adding things to the freezer on hot days, I think fermentation is one of my favorite ways to preserve really any kind of food. When I really don't want to get the canner going, I don't want to get the dehydrator going. Actually, the freeze dryer does put out some heat as the pump runs. So yeah, fermenting, it's really easy. It's really actually pretty basic. It's generally pretty inexpensive. And if you haven't tried it yet, maybe this is the year. I have fermented quite a few things here on YouTube before, and I think it's time for a playlist. So if you are interested in more goodies that are fermented, which does include sourdough and does include cheese, I'll go ahead and link my new playlist up here, and I'll see you over there.